I'm now live. I'm now live. Good morning. Good morning. And sound it out. For those of you who don't know Ivy, first of all, she's my dear friend. She was also my doula and attended both my births and was with me through the whole journey of pregnancy and then beyond post-birth. My kids are trying to break into the room here. You're also a coach, nutritionist, journalist. You have a podcast called Future of Food, which is super, super interesting. And you're just doing amazing things in the world. And you've been quite busy during this crazy time because you're so involved in the birth world. And it's been insane for you guys, midwives and doulas. How are you holding up?
I feel like there was like an explosion when everybody was trying to orient and like scramble to replan their birth. And now it feels like it's starting to kind of calm down a little bit. The people who scheduled into midwifery care are getting scheduled. Most of the midwives are booked now. So it's like less kind of scrambling. And there's a little bit of a settling that's happening. And I feel like we're finding this new normal and really surrendering to the reality that it's not going to be normal for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So there's a group of us doulas that are like calling around to the hospitals pretty much daily and checking to get the updated policies, which are changing really quickly. The most recent update that I got is that some hospitals are now requiring moms to wear masks actually during labor. Which if you can imagine having to have your face covered like in active labor, it's pretty rough. But like we were talking about before, I really see both sides of it because the nurses don't have enough PPE to protect themselves, and so we're having to go to these other measures. There was just a local hospital here where I attend deliveries a lot. The nurses are actually on strike and are now being told they can't return to work because they didn't want to enter patients' rooms without the proper protective equipment, which we can all understand, right? So it's like I think there's this silver lining in the sense that I'd like to think we're all developing this empathy for all of us who are all going through this together: nurses, laboring women, all the medical personnel, those of us that are trying to support laboring women.
Yeah. Well, you guys are so incredibly important. So thank you for everything that you're doing. It's definitely been a crazy time for parents that are about to birth or have birth during this season of a pandemic. Just so you guys know, I turned off the comments because I want to be able to see Ivy's beautiful face. But you can still leave. I learned this like 2 days ago. You can still leave questions in the little question box, and I will make sure to open that once in a while and see what you're asking us. So you can still ask your questions.
The questions that we got on your post yesterday, I actually printed them out. So there's a couple questions.
Beautiful. At the end. Great. Yeah, we have some questions from earlier. So what we are talking about today is what you can do to support your family's health, both mentally. It's one of those days. I'll be sipping my coffee through this entire live. It's one of those days. Mentally and physically. And then towards the end, we're also going to talk about how we can help to stop the rise of pandemics and the origins of the virus. And that's stuff that we haven't really talked about yet. So I'm super interested in what you've been learning about that and the little things that we can do to take control and take charge and hopefully create a brighter future with less pandemics.
It's important. I feel like a lot of us are talking about like the meaning of this in terms of slowing down, remembering what's important, which is all huge. And then like actually going into that nitty gritty, Al Gore would say the inconvenient truths, the uncomfortable realities that we have to face as a collective so that this doesn't become the new normal. I can't wait to dive into that with you.
So great. So I would like to start with I mean, if we just take the temperature, right, of the current situation, and I think it's been sort of the same the entire time, that there are those people that still feel like this is just one big overreaction. And then you have people in the middle that have kind of figured out their new routine and rhythm, and they're staying at home, they're staying safe, they have a good plan. It's sort of neutral, right? And then at the end of that spectrum, we still have some of us that feel deep anxiety and fear and overwhelmed by everything happening in the home, everything that's not happening anymore, everything that's happening in the world with viruses at hospital. It's just so much to hold. And we have this entire spectrum. And sometimes one person can go through the entire spectrum themselves in one day, is sort of what it feels like. And what I've noticed is I'll have days that are lovely. And then all of a sudden, I'll wake up one morning and just feel so drained, so tired, not rested at all. And everything feels like a challenge. I would love to be able to leave my house. I would love to not see my family for half a day.
It's okay. You can say it.
It's right. It's like, oh, it hurts saying it, but it's real. You know, and it's just, there's so much that we're holding. And if we're parents and spouses or partners, then we also have those relationships to care about and still nurture. And especially with kids, they're at home, they're not in schools anymore. How do we keep them happy and healthy, and how do we protect them from the anxiety that is just in every corner? So I would just love to dive into that wherever you want to start, because I would like to talk about how do we connect with our partners when things get rough, and how can we do the same thing with our kids? And I know that you work with a lot of couples. It's not just pregnant mamas that you work with. Your clientele is huge, and you definitely work with couples, helping them with all sorts of things. So why don't you just dive in there first if you want?
Yeah, well, you know, this is a time. I actually read an article the other day that divorce lawyers are like, they're as busy as doulas right now because
No.
oh yeah, I mean, real talk. I mean, that probably not too surprising. Like, right, when we put two people together, there might be things in the relationship that have been simmering under the surface,
Mm-hmm.
that when we go off to work and we're only spending like 1 or 2 waking hours a day together, those can kind of be pushed aside, and we can talk about our day and talk about what we need at the grocery store. But then when you're like together 24/7, there's an opportunity for all that to come forward to the surface.
Yeah.
And if we don't have the tools in place to address those issues in a way that brings us closer together and actually clears them, the whole thing just deploys, right? So it's actually very similar. What we see happening now with families is very similar to what I see with the couples I work with after the birth of a child, where it's like when it was just the two of them, they could go out to dinner, they could go see friends, they could, you know, be blossoming in their careers and do these things. That then you put a baby on top of that, and it's sleepless nights, and it's, you know, all of a sudden maybe a little less sexy, not only from the perspective of the added pressure, but also there's just less time to have those things that formerly nourished the relationship.
Right.
So one of the things that I like to do is something called an intentional dialogue. And this was developed by 2 PhD psychologists, Harville Hendricks and Dr. Helen LaKelly Hunt. And they've been married for like over 40 years. I think they have like 4 kids or 6 kids. I mean, they've like been through the trenches.
Did they write that book, Getting the Love You Want?
Yep.
Yes, I was just talking about that yesterday.
Yeah,
it's
so
a good one.
And, you know, so we're going to talk about the intentional dialogue. This is a tool that you can use. It's a tool that I teach all my families to baby-proof the relationship, or if they've already had a baby and want to get things back on track. I have the families I work with literally do this practice every single day for a full 40 days. And it's like relationship boot camp, that, you know, it's like a muscle you flex. So the first couple times you do it, it's like, it can be super confronting. It can feel super like tedious. And then you flex those muscles and it starts to get less awkward. It starts to feel more natural. It starts to feel more easeful. And it's really a powerful transformation. By the end of the 40-day process, I can't count the number of couples I've worked with that were also like concurrently in marriage therapy that said to me, like, we don't really need that anymore because our communication is so clear. And beyond just communication, they develop this really deep empathy for one another, which is really the backbone of feeling connected and supported in a thriving relationship. It's not just about the talk. Yeah. And I think that's really important, and what makes this particular dialogue process so magical. I'm going to use that word. It's like, it's that powerful because it's not just another communication tool. You know, I also work with something called nonviolent communication when I'm working with couples, which is really beneficial tool to know. I totally support NVC. But the special power of the Imago dialogue process is that it fosters this empathy where not everything needs to be said. We start to develop this ability to just really feel each other and put one another in the other's shoes from their perspective.
Right.
Because the research shows, the John Gottman Institute has done some amazing research into relationship that shows, I want to say it's like 60%, maybe even more, higher percent of issues that couples report in therapy and during the divorce process are problems that have been there all along. Right. It's not like we're having new problems. So it's not so much about solving the problems as about developing this empathy for each other, which is really the environment that allows love to thrive.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know, like, for us, especially as women, how important that is, to feel empathy. It is so much more important than fixing anything.
Yeah.
And I know that's where it can get tricky because men in general love to fix and save and take care of and, like, let's figure this thing out. Whereas we as women, just when it comes to coming together with our partner and having a communication, it's just so much more about finding just that sacred space, that empathy and compassion for each other, just a safe space. And the solving of the problem, not so much. Like, that's not as important. Of course, that can come next, but it's more about that connection.
Yeah.
So please tell us what it is. How do we do this?
Yeah, I will. And I just, just in response to your observation about empathy, I think that's so true. I think that's why sometimes I have moms who come to me and they're like, Ivy, I want to talk to you more than I want to talk to my husband. And I'm like, that's because I'm a woman. Like, we're speaking the same language, you know? So this is a way to build that resonance into the relationship. And then I also like to acknowledge the difference between masculine and feminine energy. And that's not unique to men and women, right? Like, you and I have masculine energy. Yeah. We're probably using it right now in our business, in our, public, what we serve the community with. And then men have feminine energy too. But it's also important to know to keep that balance alive in the relationship and really respect and honor that your partner might need something different to nourish their sense of satisfaction. Right. If you have a partner that's predominantly masculine in their energy, it can be very helpful to let them know just very directly, I need this. I need you to do this. It would help me if you do this, because then they feel like, okay, got it. Right. And then we get into the whole dynamic of nagging, and a lot of women feel frustrated because they're like, but I've said that a million times and he's not doing it. So we also want to look at, like, what the masculine needs to feel motivated. They need to feel like they can win. And so if there's something that they feel like they're failing at continually, they'll just avoid it and go to whatever they think they're winning at, whether it's their work or basketball or
interesting.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother can of worms. But in terms of the Imago dialogue, the first step is to simply request the dialogue. So you want to talk to your partner, let your partner know, I learned this thing from this crazy doula on Emily's live. Are you down to try it with me? And this piece is really important, that we don't just do, like, what I call a drive-by, where we're like, hey, I need to talk, because especially in the male brain, masculine energy can be very single focused. So if they're in the midst of focusing on something else, yanking them out of that is going to feel like stress.
Yeah.
And you know, women, when we're in our masculine energy too, right? Like if I'm trying to focus on something and some, you know, a kid or anybody's like, hey, I need to do this. It's like, ha ha, ha, give me,
Yeah.
you know, right?
Yeah.
So the first step is just requesting the dialogue. If it's not possible right then, you set a time. And then you have partner A and partner B. And partner A is the partner who's going to do the sharing. And it's really partner A's responsibility to keep it as brief as possible, right? So share from your heart, share from your vulnerability, share your deepest self on the deepest level of awareness available to you. But this is not the time, ladies, to, you know, go into the whole story, bring up the past, really be processing emotions. We want to do our own personal inner terrain work on our own. And that's also something that I really support my clients with, especially after the birth of a child. For quite a while, there can be a big hormonal fluctuation during the process of conceiving, trying to conceive, and pregnancy as well. That can like amplify our emotions. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to vomit all of that on our partner. That's going to be way too much, and it's not going to be as constructive a dialogue process. So we want to really be clear when we show up to the process that we're able to share it in a way that our partner can digest.
Right.
Right? So partner A is going to share, and partner B, let's say that's the male partner in your typical heterosexual relationship, he's going to listen with no interrupting, which is super, super challenging to do. So we really want to have empathy for each other in this process too, and know that it's really, really challenging to receive something like that and not jump into defensiveness and not feel accused and not say your own perspective or correct the record, but just listen. So that's that first piece, is just the listening. Second piece is partner B is going to reflect back what he heard. And I'm using he just for the sake of this example. So he's going to say, you know, so babe, what I'm hearing you say is this. And partner B is going to use the exact language of the other partner as much as possible. So this is not the time to paraphrase or correct anything that you think they got wrong. It's exactly their view in exactly the way they said it, exactly as it occurs to them. And you reflect it back. So that's step 2, is the reflection. And then you say, did I get that right? And partner A either says, yep, that's right, or no, and then you can correct it and reflect what you heard. And then partner B says, is there more? So then partner A can share more. So it's really an opportunity to get it all out, right? All the stuff, clean out all the cobwebs that we've been burying and pressing and pushing aside. And then when the answer to that, is there more, is no longer there, partner B says, thank you. You once again reflect it back. And then the third piece is really important. The third piece is validation. So even if everything they said is exactly the opposite of what you think happened, the practice is validating your partner's reality, getting inside of their world. And so then you say, this is what I heard you say. And the validation piece, and that makes total sense. You make total sense. What you're saying makes total sense. And you're not lip servicing this, right? Like you really mean it, because you're climbing inside of their world, inside of their perspective. Right? So then the fourth piece is the most challenging piece and the most important piece, because this is where we're going to take the relationship to the next level. This is where things deepen. This is where wounds get resolved. This is where resentments get shattered and true love can really start to take root and blossom again. The fourth step is empathy. So now I'm going beyond just saying, you make total sense. And I'm diving deeper into that perspective and letting you know why that makes total sense. So that I can really imagine that you felt crushed and devastated when I said that. And that makes total sense. So if you like, Emily, we could actually do like a mock dialogue right now if you want to do some role playing to kind of
Sure, let's do. I was just thinking this is like an acting exercise.
Yeah,
as long as we we'll do a quick one so that we have time to cover so that we have time to cover everything.
Perfect. So, you know, of course, this example doesn't have to be true to life. It can just be something you make up. You know, but so why don't I be Justin?
Yes.
And you come to me and request the dialogue.
Okay. You're Justin?
Or anybody you got, do you have anything that needs to be cleared with anybody?
Ooh, let's be careful. We're not going to turn this into
therapy session
because I'm good at
we're not just tell me who I am. Tell me if I'm male or female.
Let's just pretend you are Justin, and we'll just do this. We'll just do this little thing.
Okay. He's pretty open about your challenges. You guys share with the community.
we did last night on a live. That was quite interesting.
I missed it.
So my love, Justin, I would love for us to have a conversation when there's time. Can we sit down after dinner, after the kids are sleeping today?
Baby, I have been working nonstop today. I want to give you my full presence. And I just know that by tonight after dinner, I am going to be completely tapped out. Could we do it tomorrow morning? Like, you know, after they go off with the nanny, before we both dive into work? Could we do it like around 10 or 11 a.m. tomorrow?
Let's do it at 11 tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And that's important to know that the dialogue needs to be within 24 hours. So this is not something that we're putting off for a week. Do it at a time when you can both be fully present and, you know, bring your full selves, because this is going to require a lot of bandwidth. It's not something you can just do when you're stressed out or half asleep. You're going to need to bring your full presence. So you want to really plan for that, but at the same time, get it done within 24 hours. We can prioritize it that way.
Amazing. Okay, so one thing that I would say when we are sitting down then is thank you for making sure that we're having this conversation. I've been feeling really overwhelmed lately and stressed and just completely out of focus and frazzled. And I just need to feel that I have a couple hours every day when I can go and do whatever it is that I need to do. And I would love your help with the kids during that time. I know we have Fairy, who is with the kids and helping plenty, but they also need the attention from one of their parents. So when I'm away for those 2 hours, can you take some time from your work to just be with them and play with them? Is that something that would be possible for you, so that I can just fully, completely turn off and relax into what I need to do?
Let me make sure I heard everything. So you're saying that you've been feeling frazzled and overwhelmed in having to be with the kids all day, even though we have Fairy. Did I get that right?
You did, yeah.
And is there anything else?
There is more.
You were also asking me if I could step in and take the kids for a couple hours so that you can have time to renew yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there more?
And I feel like there's more. I want you to know why I'm asking you, even though we have help. It's just this yearning for the kids to have you during the day as well, because that allows me to really turn off my mommy guilt, knowing that they have you for a moment. And that's just something that I want you to be aware of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you make total sense. What I'm hearing is that even though we have help, the reason why you want me to really understand that you want me to be there, because it helps relieve some of your mommy guilt to know that the kids have one of us there in addition to Fairy.
So I just have to say, that's really cool. The whole practice of like, is there more? Because I feel like it's so easy to simplify something. And as you said, sometimes it is good to simplify a request, but to like have your partner ask you, is there more? It just allows for that vulnerability to really come out. Like this pretend example that I just came up with Justin, you being Justin. It's just like, yeah, but I feel good to be able to communicate my reasoning behind why it's important for me that he is with the kids. And that he takes that time, which he's doing, by the way. But this is a conversation that we've had a couple of times. So it's just sweet to have that opportunity to be able to share more without getting lost into the emotional stuff, but just adding that layer of, oh, this is why this is important to me.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
the next step.
So the next step is the validation. Like, you make total sense. I really get that even though we have help, it really makes a difference for you to know that I'm there with the kids, because then it relieves your guilt of not being there. You can know that there's a parent with them and that they're getting that connection with one of us. And that makes total sense. You make total sense, babe. And then, the fourth piece in terms of empathy with this one, I feel like it's the empathy is kind of already built into the validation. Where the empathy piece gets really challenging and really important is when there's a complaint. The complaint isn't the right word. I would say when there's a rupture in the fabric of the relationship, when there's a hurt, when there's a trigger, that's when we really need that step number 4. So,
Makes sense.
If someone's feeling injured, the natural reaction when a partner tells us, like, when you did this, it hurt me. The natural reaction is to want to explain ourselves and defend and to justify ourselves, which does exactly zero healing in the relationship. It helps us feel understood, but then we're just two people trying to be understood. And the studies from the Gottman Institute, they've actually videotaped couples in conflict, and they show that people end up saying the same thing on repeat. Both people are just repeating. Nothing new is being said because it's not actually landing, and they're not providing for each other. They're not actually arguing about what they're arguing about at that point. The entire argument is, I need you to hear me. I need you to understand me. I need you to feel me. And so with this process, even though it does take effort, you're saving yourself all that time of the round and around loops that can honestly play on for years.
So draining too.
Yeah. So and, in terms of the physical health piece, relationships and the quality of our relationships is a huge factor in our immune health, because it affects our stress levels. And when we have cortisol in the body, our immune system can't function right. And so I talk about this with my couples who are trying to conceive. If there's relationship stress, nobody's getting pregnant. It can happen, but it's less likely, especially with couples experiencing fertility challenges, because cortisol and progesterone compete. Progesterone is one of the female hormones. So we really need to be in our relaxation, in pregnancy too, of course. And it's relationship quality, the support of the primary relationship is one of the key predicting factors in perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So this isn't just about the relationship, it's about that ripple effect on your whole life and your whole family and your physical health as well.
So interesting. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's
we got a question about helping kids feel safe in COVID.
I was just gonna
and I think that when if it's a family where a mom and a dad or two moms are living together, the harmony of that relationship is part of what makes little kids, especially, the question we got was from a mom of a 2.5-year-old. That's when they feel safe in their world, because that's they're not listening to the news and listening to the president and listening, it's like, is everything okay right here in my world?
And no doubt they always look to us to that's how they take the temperature of a situation. How is mama doing right now? How is daddy doing right now?
Exactly.
Like, how are we doing here? And that's one thing that I've noticed, because we got a couple of questions like that. That people are afraid that, kids might get traumatized somehow by this situation that we are in, because so much has changed. And I would just say, I hear that concern. I get it. My mommy worry has also gone to those places, but I feel like what you're saying is so important. If you create a safe environment at home, then they will feel safe. And safe does not mean that you're always joyful and magical and chipper and everything is amazing every day. I think kids feel safe when they see authenticity. I know my kids feel safe when they see me showing up the way that I'm feeling, but of course taking responsibility for that and not laying that on top of them for them
Right.
to take care of it.
Right.
But I can say that mommy's feeling a little off today. I'm struggling with something, but you know what? That means that I just got to take care of myself a little bit better today. And I will sit there in the sunshine and take in the vitamin D, or I will take 10 minutes to have my cup of tea alone. And they get it. And I can see them, or if I happen to lash out, which happens, I try to be quick to apologize and just say, you know what? I totally lost my patience there. That was not cool. And I'm sorry. That is not for you to hold. And I see their shoulders drop.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
if we can create that container for our kids, no matter how crazy the world outside is, I feel like we're in a good place, and the kids can understand whatever they can understand. And then thank God for technology. We can FaceTime grandparents and FaceTime friends that they miss. We even FaceTime with Maya's teacher, and you can still keep in touch and help them feel connected in that way, or do kids yoga classes like we did this morning. There are ways, there are little things that we can do. And kids are, what's that word? They're so
They're like little
strong.
sponges.
Yeah, they are, but they're also so strong. I just feel like they can
Resilient. Yeah.
handle, resilient, thank you.
Yeah.
They can handle so much as long as they have that foundation of safety.
Yeah.
If the day is like this or the world is like this, they can still stay steady.
Yeah. I think
If
what
we
you're
do.
saying is so important because the pregnant moms I work with are often really afraid that when they're feeling big emotions like sadness and fear, they're so afraid it's going to affect the baby.
Yeah,
And
I
what I
remember that.
say is actually something your midwife used to say, Davy Kalsa. She
Mm-hmm.
talks about how, like, no, this is you showing the baby how to handle life. This is what builds their resilience. Is
Yeah.
feel your feelings, get it out, and you can talk to the baby just like you talk to your kids and say, these are not your feelings, baby. You are so safe. These are mommy's feelings.
Mm.
And, you know, little kids are wired through limbic resonance to mirror us. Their limbic brains are literally wired to mirror us. So if we're, even if it's on like a micro level, if we're feeling frazzled, you'll see the kids just start to go insane in the membrane, right? They start like going loco. So one of the things we can really do is regulate our own nervous system. And I actually have some tools we can share if you want to go into that about the grounding and the orienting and the
Let's
resources.
please, yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about that one because I think it's just so important.
We just got a question, can we speak to apologies? But I can't see the last, I can't see
I
the,
was just looking. Can you see that because I opened it?
let me see. No,
Because I just opened the
oh,
same one.
I can see part of the question. I just see, can you speak to apologies? Last night I feel like
Yep.
I lost it a little. Oh, maybe that was it.
I feel like I was valid in why I got. Yeah, I can't see the whole thing either. But and hi Izzy. Hi. I know you. Now I can't make this go away. I hope this does not show up on your screen because it's covering your face, Ivy.
That's
Do you
okay.
have the question up on your screen right now?
I don't mind. I do. But I can start going into the tools if you like.
Please do, and I'm gonna try to make this question go away.
So the number one tool that I give to all my mamas is pleasure. When we are in a state of pleasure, we cannot be in a state of stress. The two things don't go together. So
Right.
our amygdala, which is the reptilian brain, it's the most primal part of our brain that determines whether we're in danger or whether we're safe. Oh, Emily, now I see your trampoline. Hi.
Sorry, guys. I cannot make this question go away. I'm sorry if this is covering half
That's
Ivy's
okay.
face.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah. So sorry.
No
oh my
problem.
gosh, now I'm doing it again.
It's me and the trampoline. Speaking of pleasure, bouncing is one of the best things we can do for
It's one of the best things. Yeah, that one is amazing. I get sweaty when technology does not work, guys. Is anybody else like that?
I'm exactly the same way.
I get frustrated.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely.
No. There's a cross here.
Oh no, the cross is just if I want to leave. Oh my gosh.
I think you turned yours around now. Oh no, we lost Ivy. This is hysterical. I don't know why I find this so funny, but this is hilarious to me. Ivy, where did you go? Oh, turn on commenting. Hold on. How do we get her back? How do we get Ivy back? Where did you go? Here we go. Here's Ivy. View. They should give us a few minutes back now for being so complicated. Instagram.
Everybody stay calm.
Literally sweating in here.
I was starting to freak out because I'm like, all y'all are not seeing my dirty kitchen right now. That is not what's happening.
Poor people. Thank you guys for hanging in there. We showed you my trampoline. You got to see
my dirty dishes. It's all happening.
So I'm not going to be able to click on the questions anymore because they will not go away once I open them.
So now you all know what Emily and I do for stretch. She bounces on the trampoline and I let the dishes pile up to the ceiling. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Oh, this is just my favorite. Whew. Okay, where the hell were we?
Well, I was just mentioning how little kids, like, they pick up on our micro signals. So even if we're not acting stressed, even if we're trying to like keep it all together, they kind of like are the barometer of what's going on.
Yeah.
And this is not to blame yourself if your child is having challenges. It's just to look at like, whew, where do I need to fill up my cup?
Yeah.
Right. And pleasure is a really wonderful way to do that because when we're feeling pleasure, it sends the message to our nervous system that we're safe.
Right.
So that's where self comes in, and that's where those 2 hours that you were requesting of your husband's can be really key. A second thing that can be really helpful, just a really brief tool, is to ask really simple questions because the amygdala is, again, that primal brain. It's basically the age of 5 years old, like the equivalent of a 5-year-old. So this is not the time to go into like deep, heavy emotional processing. We can only do that when we already feel safe. So that's another reason not to have the intentional dialogue until we've already done the inner terrain work to get our nervous system grounded and calm and resourced, even if we're not calm, like feeling resourced. So one of the questions you can just ask yourself in any moment is like, am I in danger right now? And the answer to that's going to be no, right? If you're in actual acute danger right now, then that's not the time to be trying to calm down and relax. It's the time to like handle it, right? But am I in danger now? Look around. So this is one of the tools is you actually use your neck and very slowly look through the space with a soft gaze in your eyes. So our eyes are directly connected to the brain stem, and our neck and the spine signal the central nervous system that we're safe when we can really take in the surroundings. And all animals do this.
Amazing.
If you look at animals in the wild, babies do it. If you look at animals, they're orienting. This is called orienting. It's literally exactly what it sounds. We're orienting ourselves to our environment, which brings us into the here and now and out of the mental chatter of what if COVID and what if this and what if the government and the world and all the things, right? So that's a really simple thing you can do. And you want to make sure that you're looking slowly, right? So when we dart around with our eyes, you can kind of tell when someone's stressed because their eyes are looking and, you know, they're hyper vigilant and hyper focused, and that creates a positive feedback loop in the nervous system. But when we slowly move our neck and slowly allow our gaze to land on one spot and just take it in, and let that register in your body, and notice how your breathing shifts when you have that sense of like, oh, that's my fridge. I'm safe. It's so basic. We're such basic creatures at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's the orienting tool. The first one that I usually go to even before orienting is something called grounding. And that can sound kind of hippy dippy term, but it's super powerful. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's connecting with the ground, because we are actually part of the earth. Human beings kind of tend to deny that and like to bypass that and think that we're these special things that just descended from the heavens, which is also part of our being for those of us that subscribe to that idea. But we are earthly creatures while we're here. And so it's, in order for us to feel safe in the world, we have to be connected. The same way, in order to feel safe in our relationship with our partner, we have to feel connected, have this simultaneous sense of freedom and connection. And the more connection we have, paradoxically, the more safety and the more freedom we have. So grounding is simply about, when you're sitting, feeling the support beneath you. So actually right now I'm sitting on a yoga block, and I can feel my bones connected to the yoga block, and in that way I'm plugging into my roots. I'm plugging into the earth. So if you're standing on your feet, you can plug your feet in like claws or like really feel the support rise up to meet your feet. And if you can do this barefoot, like on bare earth, even the more powerful, because they've actually shown that we have receptors for antioxidants in the soles of our feet. And the earth is like a giant antioxidant. So it's so revitalizing for our whole system. And especially my moms who are pregnant or trying to become pregnant, I always have them put their feet in bare earth, because I've actually seen it help balance women's hormonal cycles. That powerful.
I totally believe it. I've actually, the last few days, because I'm focusing a lot on my feet lately, because I know I can feel that I need to ground myself. And that's the most effective way for me. It's not through my butt sitting down, but it's actually, I walk around barefoot all day, and we have the luxury of living in California and the weather is beautiful. So I walk out and I walk in the grass. Even for just 5 minutes, I just stand there and I breathe and I look up at the sun, so I get my vitamin D at the same time. And there's just something that happens when you connect your bare feet to the ground. Same thing for the kids. If they go crazy, we were talking to Dr. Karuma. What's her last name? I'm sorry, I should know. We had a beautiful live with her. If you sign up for the AMMA emails, you can watch the talk with her. But she was talking very much about, through your feet, you can ground yourself. You can ground your children. Give them a foot massage at night, or give them a foot bath. Give yourself a foot bath, because just connecting back to the feet and almost breathing through your feet is such an amazing tool to feel grounded and come home. And totally free. Really is. And so easy.
I actually, there's a tree outside my home, and the other day I was like pacing around on my phone just because I wanted to get outside, and I was pacing out there, and I wanted to sit down, and I was like, I don't really want to sit in the grass. Everybody, all the dogs are peeing in the grass. So I went and I sat my butt just like on the tree roots. Like I just sat my butt down on the tree roots and my back into the tree trunk, and immediately it was just like plugging in to an energy socket. I was just like, oh yeah. Like this is how we were meant to sit.
Right. Yeah. Did we have another part to that?
So that leads to the final tool, which the tree is actually a really good example of this, is something called resourcing.
Right.
And this is also where pleasure comes in, is if you can start to gather resources that remind your body that you're safe. And what reminds your body that you're safe is things that are pleasurable to you. So if you're in a state of extreme stress or upset, nothing might feel pleasurable. And so then what we're going for is just the tiny little step towards pleasant or neutral sensation. So with my moms who are trauma survivors, sometimes if they're triggered, it feels like nothing's going to calm them down. And so we're not looking for pleasure at that point. It's
Right.
totally out of what we're looking for is what is neutral? What is neutral? So maybe it's the sounds of the birds chirping outside your window. And if you can just allow yourself to notice that sensation, really be with that. That's a resource that'll bring you back into the presence, back into your breath, back into safety. It could be, you know, just looking at the clock, you know, if not flowers on your desk or something, and just allowing your eyes to land there and allowing that to be as a resource. Something that I use a lot, actually, just in my own life as a resource is warm tea. So when I take a sip of that, I can just imagine of the tea moving down my throat into my chest, and just that warming sensation can feel really pleasant or neutral. Right. And then once we're calm, what was pleasant or neutral can start to feel pleasurable, whether it's the sun on your skin. Something that we use with little kids a lot is to wrap them up in a blanket. Right? Kids call it like their binky. Like if you wrap them up in the blanket, they feel like it's pleasant or neutral, and then it can start to feel pleasurable. Yeah. And adults, we can do that too. Like, I am not beyond wrapping myself up like a bird, just being like, right here, we're bringing it in.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you said neutral, because I know I get stuck there sometimes. I'm like, I am in such a funk. How do I make myself feel pleasure? And it's just, you know, you're totally skipping a big step there. So knowing that sometimes neutral is enough, because that is just so much better than you know, feeling anxiety, feeling lost, or being in a funk. So that's beautiful. We have 10 minutes before they're gonna shut this down. We have a pretty big one that we wanted to talk about. Is there a way to do that in 10 minutes?
You know what, there is, because instead of me trying to paraphrase, so for anyone who's not familiar with my podcast, Future Food, we look at the connection between diet and climate change, which is on so many parents' minds. Like, what we're looking at is the connection between our personal health, the health of our families, and the health of the planet, because we can't have one without the other. And so you ask, like, how is this connected to the current global pandemic? And the reality is, the way we're eating with our agricultural system and our food supply is causing ecosystem destruction that is pushing wildlife into these concentrated areas. And then that's leaking into our animal agriculture, which you know, I think it's 90 or 95% of our animal foods are grown in these places called concentrated animal feeding operations. And so what's happening is these animals are packed so close together that disease is spreading, and then that can jump species to humans because we're encroaching more and more on their habitat. So that's a lot to unpack. I can actually just read straight out of an article that I found that I think really encapsulates it really succinctly and really beautifully. And it's just a couple paragraphs, but before I get into that, I think it's really important to just speak to the overwhelm that a lot of us feel around these global issues of, like, what am I supposed to do if this is the way agriculture is done, and if this is what's happening in the world, and if this is what's causing COVID potentially. And that's what the podcast is all about, is looking at how the daily choices we make in terms of how we feed ourselves and our families, how this is actually creating the change, that Mama Nature bounces back when we start to live in a way that's more harmonious with her. And every single day, one thing all of us do is eat. And so the foods we choose have a direct impact on our personal health. And this ties in with one of the things we were going to talk about in terms of immunity, is what foods can you eat to boost your immunity? Well, it's no mystery there that plant foods that are grown in a regenerative way without pesticides, which are disruptive to the microbiome, which is the basis for our immune system, These foods are the highest in phytonutrients, in antioxidants that'll really boost our bodies up and give us the immunity we need to thrive during this time.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what is going to transform the systems globally. And of course, you know, knowing your politicians and using voting and really voting for people that you know are part of waking up to the reality and not denying it and not putting business and profit over the health of people and the health of the planet. That's obviously important too. So this article is from The Nation, and it's from the March 16th to 23rd issue. So I'm just going to read like a brief paragraph excerpt just to give an overview for those of us that might not be familiar with what the scientists are finding in terms of the origin of the corona, the novel corona. And it's also not new. Like, this is what has been causing pandemics for the last several decades.
Right.
So it says habitat destruction, and this is wildlife habitat, threatens vast numbers of wild species with extinction. We all know that we're in a time where species are going extinct on a daily basis, including the medicinal plants and animals we've historically depended upon for our pharmacopoeia. So these are medicinal foods that are also going extinct. It also forces those wild species that hang on to cram into smaller fragments of remaining habitat, increasing the likelihood that they'll come into repeated intimate contact with the human settlements, expanding into their newly fragmented habitats. It's this kind of repeated intimate contact that allows the microbes that live in their bodies to cross over into ours, transforming benign animal microbes into deadly human pathogens. And then this next part is going to talk about how animal agriculture is a part of that. So it's not only the fact of habitat destruction that ratchets up the risk of disease emergence, it's also what we're replacing wild habitat with. To sate our species' carnivorous appetites, we've raised an area around the size of the continent of Africa to raise animals for slaughter. Obviously, that's spread throughout the world.
Yeah.
Some of the animals are then delivered through the illicit wildlife trade or sold in so-called wet markets. So most of us have heard of how the virus is thought to have originated in some of the wet markets in Wuhan. They're the wild species that would rarely, if ever, encounter each other in nature, are caged next to one another, allowing microbes to jump from one species to the next. But many more animals are reared in factory farms where hundreds of thousands await slaughter, and they're packed closely together, which provides these microbes lush opportunities to turn into deadly pathogens. So that's just to kind of give a foundation for how some of this is related, because I think sometimes when people say, what does this have to do with our food supply? It's like, what is she talking about? So that's kind of the ABCs of how it happens. So migrating towards a plant-rich diet, this doesn't mean everybody needs to go vegan, but what we're finding in terms of the mortality rates and the people that are being affected and dying from COVID, a lot of the times it's these underlying causes of gut dysbiosis, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, a lot of the things that we already know can be really supported with the proper healthy diets that are plant rich. And then again, like choosing plant foods that are locally grown, that's going to increase the nutrient content.
Right. Yeah.
So it both is a better impact on the environment, but it also means you're not getting an apple that's from, you know, the other side of the world that's been ripened artificially. It's going to have ripened closer to home, and so it's going to have all those nutrients from the soil and from the sun and all those chemical reactions in the plant that you're eating. So you kind of get a vitamin supplement every time you eat.
Right. Which is how it should be, right?
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated how this journey that we are on is really just demanding of us to connect back to really, it goes back to the grounding. I feel like this is another part of grounding. Like we're coming back to earth and finding out what is actually good for us. What eating habits are good for us, what kind of lifestyles are good for us. It's just like we're being called to reflect on all of these things, which is definitely a silver lining, like you said. And again, we don't want to add to the overwhelm. of all the things that
No.
are changes, but these are changes that you can make just one step after the other. Thank you for sharing that information. We could have a whole hour on that stuff.
Yeah, I actually interviewed on the podcast. I think we're going to be releasing it next week. I interviewed a triple board certified. You can follow him on Instagram, Dr. Zach Bush. And he's going to be speaking about what we can all do to support our immune systems during this time. And he goes deep into like exactly what foods are best, exactly what you need to look for in terms of how they're grown.
Amazing.
And lifestyle choices.
So your podcast is called Future of Food. Oh, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I think we have a delay. Future of Food. And we are going to be sharing, because you're going to cut us off in like a minute here. I just want to make sure, because you and I, we also talked about home birth safety. Now that so many people are shifting over to home births, as well as meditation resources is also something that we touched on our last live. I just want to make sure
we're the one-stop shopping.
The links to all of these things, and also the links to these IG lives that we're doing, that I'm doing here and that we do at We Are AMMA, are all on our in our AMMA home, which is my company, if you guys did not know that I co-founded with Satya Twina. So you can go to the link in my bio and sign up for our emails, and you will have access to all of this stuff, and also to Ivy's stuff as well that you so graciously share with us. This was amazing. I love you. Thank you all for showing up.
Oh, I did want to offer a vaccine resource for the vaccine question. We had a question, are we going to cover about vaccines with the COVID crisis? There is a resource you can use. I did an interview with a local pediatrician here in Los Angeles, Dr. Pejman Katarai. You can find that on my YouTube, which is just youtube.com/Ivy Joeva. It's titled Vaccine Concern, Making Sense of Vaccine Concern.
Amazing.
So if you have trouble finding that, just DM me and I'll send you the link.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Bye, honey.